Hi everyone, welcome to Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. Happy Friday. Before I talk about the books that I read this week, I just want to make two quick announcements. The first one is there is now a video posted on the BookTube Prize channel that is a call for judges for 2021. So if you're interested in finding out more about what it is to be a judge for the BookTube Prize, or if you already know you want to sign up, please go watch that short video, and the link to the survey form is in the description box of that video over on the BookTube Prize channel. So please go check that out. I'll put a link to that video in the description box below. The other thing I wanted to mention is one of my longer term projects is finally complete. I finished the music project where I was listening to all the works, some 400 or 500 works, in this reference text, which I have included below. And I have been making a playlist over on Apple Music. As I listened to each of the works, I dropped a recording of that work into the playlist. And if I'm remembering correctly, the final tally is over 250 hours worth of music on this playlist. So it is massive. But you're welcome to go to the playlist. It's linked below. You can get samples of the pieces that I've included, or if you're an Apple Music subscriber, you can just listen to the playlist. You can save it on your own account and listen to it there. So if you're interested in orchestral music, this is the end of my big project where I listen to all those works. I'm thinking about whether I'll start another music project in a couple of weeks where I focus on new release albums. For instance, I listened yesterday to a couple of albums that just came out this week. One was a wonderful recording of Franz Schubert's Ninth Symphony, the Great Symphony, played by the Cleveland Orchestra. I haven't heard a new recording by the Cleveland Orchestra in a while, I don't believe, but this one was a wonderful recording of that. Unfortunately for me, it's paired with kind of an avant-garde contemporary piece that I didn't care for at all. I can't even remember who wrote it. But the recording of the Schubert was wonderful. So I may do reviews of new albums as part of that project. I haven't decided exactly how to structure that. So what have I been reading now my reading for the BookTube Prize is over? I read 2 books this week by favorite authors who were not necessarily involved in the BookTube Prize. One because it's in translation, the other just it wasn't involved in the prize. And the first one is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, the Swedish writer, a work in translation. I have been a fan of Backman's books ever since I read what I still consider my favorite of his books, A Man Called Uwe. And I've read everything he's written since then that's fiction. He has a couple of books that are nonfiction that I have not read. Anxious People is a little bit different in character. At least it felt that way at the beginning. By the end of the book, I don't think it was that different after all. But it's very loosely, it's a story of a bank robbery that goes very badly wrong because the bank robber is trying to rob a cashless bank. And very quickly, that failed bank robbery turns into an unintended hostage situation at an apartment viewing across the street in an apartment building. And that's all I'm going to say about the setup, because there are a lot of things that get revealed over time, and I don't want to give any of those away. But it starts off a little bit slowly as you start to meet the different characters who are in the apartment when the bank robber begins to hold them all hostage. And you learn a little bit about the bank robber. And then gradually these stories start to intertwine, and you realize that some of these characters have either similar stories or actual entwined stories, and there are a lot of little mysteries that get opened up over time. And the second half of the book really gathers momentum, and by the end it was a very emotional, very enjoyable read. So once again, Backman, writes a book that I've enjoyed. I don't think Bachman's fans are going to overwhelmingly rank this as his best book. I think that's still going to be either Uva or Beartown, at least for me. But this was certainly worth reading, and I'll continue to read everything he writes. The second one I finished is another favorite author of mine. She's written 5 novels now, Fiona Davis, and this new one is called The Lions of Fifth Avenue, which is a reference to the lions outside the New York Public Library. All of Fiona Davis's books focus on a landmark building in her New York City, and she uses a double timeline in each of her books to tell a story. In this case, it's a timeline from roughly 1913 on the early end, and then the second timeline is like 1993. So there's about 80 years distance between the two timelines. And the thing that's interesting is that when the New York Public Library on Fifth Avenue first opened up, it included within its walls a 7-room apartment that was where the superintendent of the library and his family lived. That is factual. The plans show where it is. It's now used as storage. It's not used as an apartment today. And she's kept that and the historical context of that intact for her book, but she has completely fictionalized the people living there and the stories around the people there. They're not based on the actual people who lived in the apartment. And so in this story, you have a superintendent and his wife who later becomes a well-known feminist essayist. The man is the superintendent and is writing his own novel. He's hoping to quit as superintendent once he gets his novel sold and just focus on writing. She, meanwhile, is one of the very first female students at the Columbia School of Journalism for a master's degree. And so she enters that 2-year program. And so it tells their story, including the mystery around some very famous rare books that were stolen during their tenure at the library. And then the 1993 story, you find out in fairly short order, is centered on the granddaughter of the woman who was the superintendent's wife. I guess granddaughter of the superintendent, too. She is one of the librarians and the curators of a special rare books collection at the public library in 93. And she is preparing for a special exhibition, and some books disappear. And so she starts to tie together the book disappearances from the 1913 era and the 1990s era, and learns more about her family and her now famous grandmother that she didn't ever know. And so it's a dual timeline, very similar to the Bachman book in that it starts a little bit slowly as you get to know these different characters, and then as more and more gets revealed about them, it gathers momentum and is fairly suspenseful in a gentle way, but fairly suspenseful and very fulfilling read at the end. So like her other books, I found this immensely readable and enjoyable. So she's gotten in that pattern now of releasing a new book every summer. I don't know how she does that with historical research, but she does. So who knows what's coming up next summer, but I'll be in line to get it. That leaves me starting some new books today. The first one that I'm going to be starting today is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi, Gyasi's second novel. She became very well known for her debut Homegoing, which at the time was my favorite book of that year. I think it's 2 or 3 years ago. I forget exactly what year it came out, but just a brilliant, brilliant debut novel. And this has been getting very good reviews too. I don't know much about it, but I'm anxious to get into it because I just so enjoyed her first novel. The other one I'll be starting today is for my BARTERHORDES Backlist Book Club. The October selection for us in the club is Possession by A.S. Byatt, which I believe came out in the early 1990s. And this is a reread for me, but I read it in the early 90s, so I don't remember that much about it. And as I mentioned in my video last week or the week before, I read it immediately after my PhD comprehensive exams. It was the first book I read after my exams, and so my brain was so fried I don't remember the details, but I remember enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to revisiting it after however many years, 26, 27 years, I don't remember exactly. The other book that I have kind of in a long-term reading pattern is A History of Korea by Kyung Hwang, which is short chapters going all the way back to the 600s, the founding of what we now call Korea, to the 21st century. Little short chapters going through each period and special events and special people. It's told more as a narrative than just a compendium of dates and names that don't mean anything to you. And so I'm enjoying the little bit of that I've already read. We did in the book club just finish our voting for our November title. Our November choice for the book club will be Paradise by Toni Morrison. And I've read a lot of Toni Morrison, but I've never read Paradise, so that's going to be a new one for me. If you're interested in joining the book club, it's completely hosted on Voxer. All you have to do is find me on Voxer, and there's information in the description box below. And send me a note on Voxer so I can link your channel or your account name on Voxer into our discussion group. That's all it takes. You're welcome to read with us every month or whichever months appeal to you. All that leaves is my Kdrama habit, which is intense. I did finish one this week because the other ones have been going a little slower. I've been stretching them out rather than binge watching them like I usually do. The one I finished is Hotel Del Luna. I mentioned to you before that it is kind of a fantasy, history, comedy, romance, and drama. It's a little bit of everything. The story dates back some 1,000 years to a woman who is basically trapped between the end of her physical life and her ability to cross over into the afterlife. She becomes the owner of the Inn of the Full Moon, which changes its name over time to Hotel Del Luna. And it's a hotel that is only for dead guests who are having to fix something before they can proceed on into the afterlife. But because it's an actual hotel in modern day Seoul, they pay taxes and everything, they have to have a human manager to deal with the parts of it that deal with humans. And so a series of human managers over the 1,000 years that she's owned the hotel are part of the story too. And the most recent one is brought in, and there's a sense that he will be the last of the human managers before the owner crosses over into the afterlife, and it's a love story between them. And I'm not giving anything away. I mean, you learn all that in the first couple of episodes. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this one. I think it is very well done. I have 3 on the go. 2 I'm watching with other people, which is why I'm watching them more slowly. And then a third I just started, and I'm watching a couple episodes a day. I'm watching with an old friend. I'm watching It's Okay to Not Be Okay, which is on Netflix, and it's absolutely beautifully done. I'm sure this is going to be in one of my top 5 or 6 picks after I finish it. I think we're a little bit more than halfway finished with it, and every episode has been terrific. And then I'm doing a group buddy watch of one called Sky Castle, which is about a group of families who live in this condo village, Sky Castle, that are tied to the 3 major universities in Korea. SKY is an acronym for the 3 big universities, and it's all about politics and betrayal and college prep. I said last time it's kind of like the Aunt Becky story in Korea on steroids about trying to get your kids into college. And it's very well done as well. And then the one I just started is a historical one called My Sassy Girl, kind of a silly name. But it's about a princess in the Joseon era who gets bored and sneaks out of the palace all the time. And she gets drunk and she gets in trouble. And she runs into a scholar who is freshly back in Korea after spending, I think it was 3 years in China studying. And he gets her out of a scrape on one of these evenings when she's out and about. Doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who he is. And she throws up all over him. She's so drunk. And then he takes her to a hotel so he can clean up and she can sleep it off. And he's trying to get some of the mess off of her clothing. And she wakes up and thinks he's trying to rape her. And so it's a series of misunderstandings. It's obviously going to be a romance that goes from hate to love. I don't think it's all that good. The writing's pretty predictable. The acting's okay. I think the woman who's in the lead role is a pretty good actress, and so she's carrying the weight of this whole thing. The rest of the cast is just okay, or at least the rest of the writing for the cast is okay. Some of these actors are great actors in other series that they don't really have ways to shine. So this one's just mediocre for me so far. I've only seen the first 4 episodes. So that's what I've been reading. That's what I've been watching. That's what I've been thinking about preparing for next year's BookTube prize. I hope you all are well and safe mostly, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody.